So, in fact, I think we were already recording. No, we are recording now, I think. Yeah, there we go. Okay. I don't remember who starts this. Go on, Marlin, you can go first. We'll be unprofessional as always and carry on.
Welcome.
There you
go. This is me. I work as head of Dynamics 365 at a Scandinavian company called Knowit. I've been a BizApps MVP since July 2019, and 2020 July I became an MCT. I laugh way too often and way too high. I have fallen completely in love with the community and spend a lot of time in it. I am a massive geek in a lot of things and an obsessive Liverpool fan.
And I'm Matt Beard. I am the development team leader at D365. Not necessarily just Dynamics, full stack C# developer across all platforms for about 10 years. That recently years ago now, fell into Power Platform and just fell in love with it. So that's definitely a focus of where I'm at now. Published author, caveat, in Power Automate, not in an actual book. And like Malin, a geek that's loving Liverpool. There was supposed to be football banter here of European Super League, but I opted against it. So I just thought instead I'll just show you all a picture of my seat at Anfield, just so I can get the stadium in there at some point or another. So yeah, without further ado, I can hand back over to Malin about what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, so we talk a lot and often, and Matt and I, even though we have a lot of common interests, both geeks and football fans, he's a dev and I'm definitely not a dev. So we thought this could be a very good session and just go through what has changed the last few years. Is there any room for pro developers? Do we need them? And if we do need them, what should they focus on? And why on earth am I here in a dev presentation? So what is low code anyway? Well, no code is no code, but it isn't something new. For those of you, probably not that many here, remember Microsoft Publisher, which was a tool where you could customize your own websites back in 91. So we're talking way back when. And it was a tool where you could use drag and drop more or less and create your own websites. And it's easy for me as a non-technical person to create my own websites and advertisements and everything. So it has been a tool for many years, and there's a lot of use for it. Often used on websites and has been used for many years. And click and point as WordPress, you can just drag and drop functionality. And it really feels like magic because you're doing code without actually doing code. And what is code? Keith Watling, I think a lot of us know this awesome guy. He once said that everything that contains curly brackets is code. End of story. That's it. In between, we have the low-code solutions. Charles Lamanna, he's probably changed titles yet again, but he had the title of corporate vice president, wasn't it? Of the low-code application platform. So that just shows you that Microsoft really focus on the low-code platform, and they have a lot of people working on this to make it available for people like us. I just come from creating estimates in Excel, and there are a lot of low codes, so Excel functions, and that you can do in Excel, and that many of us have been using for many years, and that is considered low code. And you always have the drag and drop functionality. So you have Power Automate, and you can drag and drop, and you can get some help. And you often get help from what isn't the correct code. So you can get some help and create solutions that you could never have done, or I could never have done, if without code. And I'm not doing this.
So it's So if we're doing all that pro code, I always call it pro code because so many words of what we call them anymore. Pro code is basically everything else. Anything that creates a low code, no code equivalent. Anything that is just so complex that it needs dozens and hundreds of lines of code to do the thing they need to do. And ultimately, the simplest way of doing it, it's not strictly 100% true, but it's a way I look at it, is that anything that needs compiling, so anything that a coder goes, yeah, that's done, let's try it, let's build it and see what it does. And, JavaScript's a slight difference on that, but we'll skip over that one. That's the sort of stuff, that's pro code, that's what we're doing. So, yeah, we spoke to some people. I'm not going to read through these, and Marlin, I'll hand back over to you in a minute. But there was some great quotes that we spoke to. Marlin spoke to them in a chat, and to MVPs, the way that they felt like what it is, what's the difference between them all, and ultimately that the general consensus is worded in different ways, that it's the bridge.
Yep.
There's a fantastic bridge between no code, low code, and pro code that everybody helps work together, and hopefully that's, with the evolution of the Power Platform, that's the message that we'll give on as we keep going through.
Exactly.
So over to you, Malin.
Yeah. I remember this fondly. Dynamic CRM. It is and will forevermore be Dynamic CRM in my head. But 10 years ago, just about when I started in the Power Platform, then we were dependent of developers. So it was, can we make this field be hidden when the owner is me? And the developer would say, yeah, that's an hour dev work. Oh, okay, fine.
Let's not forget here that devs will always overestimate. Just before anybody thinks I'm really slow at what I
do. And then again, can we make this field be required when the status is new? Another hour. Fine. And when a lead is qualified, can you make it automatically email, etc., etc.? Fine. 6 hours. And we're like, yeah, sure. We have no idea. So 10 years ago, it would take 8 hours for the developer to actually go through all of this and create those 3 easy solutions. For the functional consultant, it was about a minute worth of work, but endless waiting time for an available developer and actually getting the work done. And of course, 10 years ago, the project manager would wonder, so where is the big project right now? And of course, the developer were so overworked with everything they had to do that nowhere I've had no spare time. And how do we do this today? So the same questions. Can it be hidden when the owner is me? Yeah, no problem. We have a business rule to do that. And how much time does it take? About 5 minutes. Easy. Can we make the field required when the status is new? Yeah, no problem. Same business rule. Love it. 5 minutes. Easy, and it works. So when the lead is updated, can you send an automatic email? Yeah, sure. If they hadn't changed all the names and tables and rows and fields, and I'm old school, so it took me a while, but no problem. It just takes 15 minutes. Click.
Oh, click. Sorry, I clicked off. There you go. I was clicking and it wasn't working. There you
go. So now you have spent no code time, 25 minutes, and you've set it up and you've got it all working. And we're not talking about solutions and managing solutions and everything, but just the actual time it takes to do something like that. Perfect. And where is the big project now? Well, I can actually do the work myself, and we have saved, on those 3 tasks, we've saved almost 7.5 hours. So that's a full day of work, which is awesome. So this was how it looks before, and now you could do a lot more as a functional consultant with no code, and you leave custom dev work and anything else for the developer. And of course, we have Power Automate, which is the no code / low code. Even though I have at times called Matt Colin Jones and said, can you please help me? I have no idea what is happening and I have no clue on how to fix it. It always helps to be a developer, even in a type low code platform as Power Automate. But still, it is easier to do than it was before. And you can make it not easy at all. So you can do all the codey stuff, and you can, I don't touch a lot of the full capabilities that are in Power Apps. As Matt, he could easily just do all of this.
Yeah, so I mean, so you can see here already on the screen, there's the split. So
Yep.
The left-hand side is drag and drop. That's it. There's the entire UI is going to do it for you. You click there, you want that field in there and whatever. I mean, fine, there's a custom connector in this, but the point is that the response Power Apps, that's nothing complex there. There's no code in there at all. I've literally drag and dropped. Now,
Yeah.
on the right-hand side, I've jumped from no code to low code. The only low code within that is ultimately writing JSON to return somewhere else, but that requires this extra level of understanding. So there is jumps between these stages, and that's what this demo shows. And like Julian said in the chat, there is a governance nightmare. And with these things, when people realize they can do these things, they can cause problems as well. There's the old statement, right? With great power, great responsibility. And if you're not clever in the way you are limiting the Power Automate, there is problems you can do. So problems I've genuinely seen. I saw someone actually did this with when a new tweet was posted with a generic hashtag. They wanted to bang it into Dataverse. As you can imagine, the Dataverse instance filled up fairly quickly. The flow runtimes got hit, and ultimately the entire system did that and just didn't know what it could do. So yes, great. But there is problems to be had, and this is another element that I think we get onto, but it's worth bringing up now while we're talking about it, is that pro devs mostly can think about that bit a little bit more, so they can give that advice to people that don't think that way. And hang on, have you thought of the bigger picture? Have you thought how, if this goes wrong, what's going to happen? Have you got fail safes in place that if you do get stuck in a recursive loop, can you get out of it? The little things, the standards that you become used to as a developer, you need to pass down the chain as well, which I think is useful to do.
Because I'm sure that the person that made this Twitter integration, he was just, yeah, super awesome. I made it work, and it just comes into my database automatically, and super, super great. And you might not think about all the consequences, and you might not think about how you actually killed the system or created a massive bill because your database was enormous.
Absolutely. And what that can then do is there is an element within Power Automate which is described as the low code platform that the pro coders need to get into. So custom connectors is low coders, pro coders can do that stuff, but they can very quickly get too complex. When you start talking about OAuth and those sorts of things, I mean, no authentication API key, you can see them getting more difficult as you describe what they are. And it's not that non-pro coders, low coders, I'm going to get lost in a web of phrases here. It's not they can't understand them, and they absolutely can, but do they need to? Is where's the balance? So I understand what OAuth is. I understand what the protocols are. I understand how to implement it. Whilst a low coder can, do they need to waste that time doing that? Is that a practical usage of their time? Probably not. So you need to work out where you're putting them into place. And yeah, DLP and damage control. So your data loss prevention, you don't want to let people just go, oh yeah, when someone adds a new contact into my Dataverse, can you also put it in this Excel spreadsheet? It's not very sensible, but they could do that if you're not sensible. And yeah, systems with coding standards. So API calls is something that most people out of the development world ain't going to think about. They don't care. They've not seen that chart in the admin platform, and that you have to start caring about them. So if you're loading in 10,000 records and then you're iterating over every single one of those records, making a change, that's 10,000 plus one calls. Is there a better way of doing that that a developer who's experienced in trying to keep that downtime can apply?
Yeah, and I had a developer once. He was actually a developer, but he didn't have the data structure and data model and Power Automate skills, and he tried to make an integration with a website and with Dynamics, and he went through when a new person came into the website, when a new sale happened on the website, the Power Automate went through every single customer that was in the base to check if that something happened to one of them, and he called on that every hour, and he was wondering why isn't this doing, why are there so many API calls, why has that just skyrocketed? I'm like, well, you are going through absolutely everything on both sides every single time and not limiting anything. So it's also a bit, as Julian said, to understand the data model and to have everything, because it's not just if you're no coder, then your Power Automate skills are limited like that, but you can also have developers that doesn't know the flow of Power Automate, no pun intended, or the data model, and you can actually just, I don't know how to say it without swear, but you can ruin it from both sides.
That was a safe one way. I'm going to beep it. You're fine. So power apps.
It's kind of both. It says no code, low code, and Canvas apps, as it says, is almost all no code, low code. I come from the model driven world, and I know that now I think you can do so much more than you could 10 years ago if you only understand some of the, I mean, if then sentences, are they really code? Not in my low code maybe, but if you just understand them, then you can do a lot. And the same thing is in Canvas apps when you have the functions. Yeah. Then we have the tool we all love, XRM Toolbox. It's where I can do codey stuff without actually coding. So tools that can help me in my work that I would have needed a developer or spent a week more in configuration time, or just not being able to do. And it's just so much things to do. And we have awesome people like Jonas Rapp that has built the Fetch XML builder. And I think this is yours, Matt.
Yeah, I had to shill it in there somewhere, didn't I? Yeah.
And of course, the Ruben Workbench is another great tool in the XRM Toolkit box. And it's all done for free. So you can go in and donate for the tools, and you can donate for a specific tool or for just the full XRM toolbox. So they spend a lot of time developing stuff like this to help you. And if you work with Dynamics or Dataverse and you haven't downloaded XRM Toolbox, then you're missing out a ton of help.
That was a terrible time to take a drink. I agree. And then when it comes to coders, you've got the extra step on top within Power Apps, within model-driven apps. And yes, XRM Toolbox. Who said XRM Toolkit? Was that you, Malin?
I have a cold, so I'm not working.
I mean, ultimately, right. So as a developer, if you understand the four concepts of create, update, delete, and read, then almost everything that the system does is based on those four things. qualify lead is ultimately doing that, right? It's going to make a new contact. It's going to make a new account. It's then going to go and update the lead and make some changes. You'd be hard pressed to find many requests that ultimately don't boil down to those 4. But you can make them, you can use them, and you can make these things for other people. So yeah, you create, update. You can make any code you want. There's some examples of different use cases that Microsoft have given you, but that doesn't mean you can't make your own or can't use those within your code. The benefits that a developer has that a non-developer has is that we can pick when our code runs, which all through the plugin pipeline. And there's actually a session by Mark Carrington in about 40 minutes on this exact thing of when code runs, because you can do very clever things at very different times. You've got the benefit of things like transactions, which, all right, and now you've got transactions in Power Automate, but you're still a little more limited in when you run them. And then you've also got the power to decide if you're running synchronously or asynchronously. Power Automate is very famously asynchronous only. That's the limitation. That's why people still go to the old school workflow stuff. So yeah, there's that. And for the curious people that know it was 30 wasn't that, that's because 30 is that middle stage, just in case you're curious. But rather than me go into this that I normally would, I would suggest going to check out Mark's session, because he's going to tell that in much more detail than I've seen. And I've seen that presentation before, and it's, if you're a dev that does plugins without realizing why you're doing what you're doing, it's a great session. So I'm going to give that one a plug. And yeah, you'll be seeing this plugin registration. Now, this is the plugin registration tool that comes from XRM Toolbox, because I don't know who it is actually, but someone put it within XRM Toolbox rather than its own standalone, which was one of the best things I ever learned, was that I don't need to leave that tool and do it. And this is a real life example of, in fact, it's one of our demo systems for one of our ISV tools at D365. And I mean, look at the amount of steps that I've got in there with that plugins. A create, update, deletions, management. Could you do all of this in Power Automate? Probably. Would you want to? No. So yeah, it's just the level of there. And then this is sort of what I was alluding to earlier, which was custom actions or custom APIs. And this is where I will chat for far too long. That makes me run out of time. So if I do spend too long on this slide, someone kick me on. Which is where you can blur the lines between all your different actions. So custom actions took me absolutely ages to understand, and there's now custom APIs which have recently gone GA, which are ultimately the same thing, and they are a specific message that can then run a specific set of code. So qualify lead is an action. We know that breaks down to update and create and set in some stuff. One opportunity. That's another example of doing those things. But when you have these custom actions available to you, if you work with your no coders, your low code to say, right, I would like to do this block of code in one go, and it has to all succeed for it to be successful. If you make that into a custom action or a custom API, they've then got the power to use that in all different places, which I'll show that in a minute. And I think this idea of calling an action is so powerful that only when you realize what they do, it can up your game in what you're doing as a dev for me. I will admit to anybody that I talk to that I hate writing JavaScript. JavaScript is not a nice language to write, and I'm sure some people on the call are going to be going, what? It's amazing. No, give me C#, give me Visual Studio, that just IntelliSense any day, and just to try and make my code what I want it to do. And a good usage of where I use these custom actions is, let's say I've got to do, let's say I'm loading a web resource on a form, and I want to get some initial config out of the system. I could do the entity metadata calls in JavaScript. I could then parse them out. I can iterate over it and do all the stuff I want to do. But in JavaScript, it's just horrible to write. Instead, what I'd rather do personally is I would make that a custom action, put the code against it in a plugin, and then just call the single custom action in JavaScript, and then I've got all the data I want, and I can just manage it in code. Yes, all right, John, TypeScript. I'm better at TypeScript than I am JavaScript, I'll give you that. But I would still take that same approach. I would still call custom actions to let the C# do the bulk of it, because it just handles it nicer, in my opinion. rather than do all your logic in JavaScript. And it also means you can reuse it. If you want to use a different web resource on a different form, you've not got to copy all that JavaScript across. You can just call that same action. So, I mean, they're the same thing, right? So custom actions, you have to go for the legacy. They're on the old workflow engine. They're not going to go anywhere because until they can kill the workflow engine, you're going to still be able to make them. They're making it harder for you to get there because they don't want you to use them. But they're not going anywhere. So as long as you know your hacks to get back to Force Classic, which, let's be honest, we all know, we all use and don't admit that we use them, then you're fine. Custom APIs, went GA, I think, earlier this month, maybe last month. They weirdly still go to the old user interface if you're curious. But the benefit of custom APIs that you don't have in custom actions is the entity collection. So you can bind an API to a collection, which you can't do in custom action. So that's a nice little benefit. So what do I mean by this? Just some quick examples, just so I can actually show you some stuff within a Dataverse instance rather than mumbling on. So this is two things. This is going to do the same thing. This is a custom action on the left, a custom API on the right. It's going to do two things. It's going to take two inputs. It's going to time them together, and it's going to give me an output. It's a bit of code. You could write that in Power Automate, but this is going to be reusable code I can use in all sorts of places. So on the, like I say, the left-hand side is one created, the right-hand side is the one created. That's all the code does. Takes two inputs and times them together and puts them in the output. So I think this is the only bit of pro code on my entire slide. So for those code people out there, enjoy this slide and the cleverness of this code, and take it from there. And then what you do is you apply it to the action. So you go to the action, you go, right, when I've got that action, I want to run this piece of code, and that's it. And then in the custom API, you can either do it, again, in plugin registration tool if you want, or at the very bottom, you can see there that I've actually linked it to there. So this is just the way that you go, right, when I call this action, run this code. That's ultimately it. So this is where I, if I wanted to, could now hand it over to my my low code, no code, and say, you can use it now. That is all going to work for you in one go. You just have to trust, give it the right inputs, and it will have to succeed. If it doesn't succeed, then you'll get an error message of some sorts. So you can give them the faith that the full story they wanted to do is going to work. So you can see there that perform an unbound action, I've done exactly the same. So they both come in as the actions. So I've got the custom actions and custom APIs. And if you look at the responses, you can see that 2 times 2 is 4 and 3 times 3 is 9. So my coding is solid as well. So I'm 100% on writing code that works on demos. Custom APIs are where it's going. It's absolutely, if you can do it as a custom API, then go for it. What I'll give it another plug into here is Mark, who's going to do this presentation later, has also just released this on Lecture Toolbox, which is custom actions, custom API converter. So if you're ready to make that jump across, and it doesn't really matter what you use, but you want to be modern, this will do all that for you. So you can avoid all the hassle of having to do that sort of stuff. So just a nice little time saver that's out there. So I think they got released last week or the week before. So it's definitely worth checking out. And again, extra on Toolbox.
And I like that you got the new logo for Dataverse.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, nice.
What I think of the logo is a different question, but this is recorded, so let's move on. And then PCF. So I know I'm talking for ages, but this shows that this is the point of this is it's published as the low code platform. So where are devs? And notice that I've been talking 15 minutes and can still go. So thankfully we're still needed. PCF. Power Apps Component Framework has been around for a while. It's GA, public preview for Canvas apps. And I'm sure I read this morning it's gone GA in polls. I think that happened today, unless I'm being crazy. I'm pretty sure that went GA today or this week. Someone in chat will know if I'm wrong. Don't mind calling me out if I am. And what the PCF can do, if you don't know what it is I mean, in my eyes, it's Web Resource 2.0. So it's everything you want to get away from dogs. Lose my train of thought. Good dog box. A web resource makes things look pretty. So whilst you can do that, to try and make it interact with the rest of the form can be difficult. So if you were to have a web resource in the old days that was, I don't know, a nice way of showing a yes/no field, if you were to change that on the web resource to make that then change on your form, you've got to handle all that yourself. It's all horrible and you get inconsistencies. Whereas the benefits of PCF is that it's the context is there with the rest of the form. So if you change, if let's say you've got the field on the form twice, one with the PCF control on it and one not, If you change it in one, it changes it in the other, and vice versa. So you've not got to worry about handling your state and all this sort of stuff. So PCF is super, super clever.
And it's also a good way of being compliant. So I used to work with a developer that back in the day, he did so many non-supported things. So he changed a lot in the system, and there was so much code in every CRM system he delivered, and half of it wasn't supported stuff. So that's also one of the things with PCF. I'm not sure, can you even make it unsupported? Well, you can do everything.
I'm
But
sure we could find a way. There is unsupported things you can do in PCF. They're mainly because limitations of what they haven't done. So example of unsupported things that you can do, don't know why I'm going to say this on a recorded video, so don't do it, is you could put a PCF on a lookup control, those sorts of things that ultimately they're going to come, I guess. But right now you can't do it officially. So there's always going to be unsupported stuff you can do, but much less. But what it does do is takes away the need to do a lot of unsupported stuff. So DOM manipulation is a great example of things that you're not allowed to do. So, making the top of the form green, whatever, that you're not normally allowed to do. With PCF, there's ways you can do things in different supported ways. And you can see that, this is the point I was trying to make earlier. So on the right-hand side, you can see do not allow and do not allow. That's the same field. If I change that, it changes both of them. So it's just super clever that way. And the good thing about the PCF side of stuff over web resources, and I know web resources can do it, but it's a pain in the is Fluent UI Office Fabric. Microsoft have finally made a consistent styling. So what it means is that if I am going to make a PCF, I can make it feel natural. What you used to get in days gone by of people doing a web resource with Bootstrap on it is that it was quite obvious that this bit of the form was a web resource. It just things got to look pretty to make people want to use the systems. And if it looks disjointed, people just ignore it, or they don't think it's important. Whereas if they don't realize it's a PCF and it fits naturally in the flow of it, then I think it's better. So this is where Fluent UI really comes into play. It fits well within the PCF type of structure with TypeScript and all that sort of stuff. And you've got lots of code. I'm not going to go through it all, but I mean, this is why you need a pro coder, right? No low coder is ever going to go into this and write PCF. But what a low coder can do is trust the dev that did it. That's where something like this comes in.
Yes, which is super awesome, the PCF gallery. Because one of the things that I love about PCF, because I don't touch them, I don't make them, but I can take a PCF that Matt has created and I could download a solution and I could put it into my own system and it works. And there are just so many PCFs that have been made. And these are just some of them. I think this picture is a couple of years old. And one of the awesome things is Andrew Butenko, which has made a dependent option set. And he has made in GitHub where you can download it. He has made step-by-step for non-developers so that I could easily go in. I can say, okay, I need to do this. I then need to do the second. I need to do the third. And then import it into my system. It works and it looks pretty.
It was funny that Malin added this slide in. So Malin added this slide into the slide deck without realizing that I'd used this exact same control about 2 weeks earlier. Yep. The dev in me didn't just install it and use it. I wanted to go through the code just to check it wasn't doing anything malicious. Not that I think Andrew Butenko wants to do anything malicious in my system, but you can never be too cautious running somebody else's code in your system. So the joy of it is PCF car is open source. You can do all these things. And yeah, Malin does what? Malin sends to me, goes, does that look okay? Can I use it? Yes, you can install it. I've saved myself so much time that I didn't have to write all this code.
Yeah, and I know the funny thing was because I think it was the day I found it through a Slack channel, and someone posted that this was awesome, and I said, oh, I'm using this for my presentation. And Andrew said that, oh, tomorrow more stuff is coming. So I think he has like this whole section of the cool and awesome PCFs that he's been making. So there are a lot of them for GitHub or on PCF gallery.
Exactly.
Check them out.
And similar to what we were saying earlier about is not just about as a dev writing code for people to use it. My coding practices and my standards I need to apply to everybody else as well, because I understand these things better. So managing change, and like someone said about the government, this side of stuff is useful. Source control and stuff, and handling code, and knowing how to move things up and down solutions. Don't let somebody go into your production system and do it. Explain why you need to do it in this area, and then move it up and down and test it, and store them in source control. Now, I'm not expecting a load of code person to go in and put it on GitHub or put it on Azure DevOps. That's where a dev comes in. But if I say to them, give me the solution, I want that equivalent in source control, I would like to run some tests on it before you do it, just to check it. This is where you work together. You're a team. A low coder doesn't do its thing and a pro coder doesn't do his thing. They're a team that can help one another. If the low coder has some time and can take it away from the pro dev, then that is the win-win scenario, right? Everyone spends their time focusing on where they need to. So, I mean, I don't know why I'm showing a picture of Azure DevOps on that. I needed a picture, I guess, of the show, so there you go. And then the other thing that is useful is external tools. XRM Toolbox tools XRM Toolkit, there you go. XRM Toolbox tools don't have to be public. I don't know when this came in. Mark pointed out to me a while ago, there's an iPrivate plugin, which basically means if you put this stuff into the XRM Toolbox repo online to people to get it, it isn't publicly available to everybody, but you can download it. So we've got a bunch of tools we've got internally that validate certain things on people's systems, because it's easier. I can give it to one of my sales guys and say, connect to that system, just check that this bit's configured right, and they go in, they press a button that runs a bit of code that does a validation on it. Because before, someone was going to manually to do it. So you can customize these tools, and you don't have to make them public. Publicly, I think I've written 2 or 3 XRM Toolbox tools. Internally, I've probably written 2 or 3 more, but no one's ever going to know they exist, except the people that need them internally. And yeah, I end on this because this is the most important point. The biggest thing I can do is low-code support. I know what lazy loading is. I know the idea of delegation. I know how to do try, catch, and find leads, and I know all these things, and I can be safe. Whereas sometimes other people can't, so I try and teach them into that, which leads to something relatively new. PowerFX.
Yeah, we've been through it actually a couple of times. So PowerFX is, well, as I said, hashtag pro code, low code unite. It is the old Excel functions that is now being rebranded as PowerFX codes. And the same as you have in Canvas apps, the functions there, that is PowerFX codes. So it's not something new, but it's something that didn't have its own name, and now they have named it.
Yeah, and I think the benefit of getting its own name now is that it's comments model driven. Yep. We know it's comments model driven. So Scott Giroux did a presentation at Scottish Summit, ultimately saying about it, and Ribbon 2.0 or whatever they're going to call it. Ribbon Workbench is all right. People can do it. Still fills some people with dread, and I understand why, because it can be complex. Whereas the Ribbon 2.0 ultimately is going to start using things like PowerFX, so we can again move even more powerful things to the low coders, and I can focus somewhere else. So yeah, PowerFX is it early days? Probably not, because it's been around in Canvas for a while. But the name is in early days. So this is
in Excel. It's been forever.
Yeah, exactly. So this is going nowhere. It's a solid thing that is where people can spend all their time doing it. And yeah, as Marlin says, accountants are pro at it. They can do it in their sleep.
I've worked with a lot of accountants, and the magic they can do in Excel and the formulas and functions they know, it's crazy. So I'm predicting if you're working with a company and they have accountants, then they probably know a lot of cool functions that could help.
Yeah, what was one I learned a while ago? No, I'm not even going to try and say it. There was some sort of crazy index function I learned. What's it called? Not trim. No, it's gone out my head. Ignore me. Right. So certifications. So the joy of it is Microsoft knows the split, right? Microsoft very purposely has made this split exist.
Yep. So this is the certification that actually it is a requirement if you want to take certifications for the partner. So if you want to become silver partner or gold partner, this is part of the requirements, and also for the specializations. So this is more of the low code part of it all. So this might be the starting point, whilst at the MB400 is it PL400 now? Yeah, probably PL400 now. Which is the new, same but different, which is the Pro Code certification. And I think Joe Griffin is in the middle of his YouTube or blog posts about the PL400, if I'm not mistaken, Joe. So there's a lot of, yep, good. So there's a lot of, I know I've sent all your blog posts to my developers, and here, take this and read this as a reference. This is not for me. This is not a certification that I'm even interested in doing, because I'm low code. So the PL100 I can do, or I will do, but the PL400 developer I'm not gonna touch.
I probably should. Joe and Matt, you're right, by the way. VLOOKUPs be complex. My mind was blown. I remember years ago, me and my wife used to work together with Excel, and we had a long-standing argument that she was going, "My HLOOKUP isn't working." I'm like, "What are you talking about? It's VLOOKUP." No, I'm using HLOOKUP. No, it's V, wrong letter. Apparently, HLOOKUP was also a thing. So there you go. So not that you're okay with that. And then XLOOKUP, just to throw Matt's even worse. So there you go. It's PowerFX is going to take over the world, and we're all going to go back in time. Dog's going to bark again because the Pope was Amazon Prime. We all know that problem, don't we, in the working from home days? So I mean, summary, where does that leave us?
Where does that leave the developers? Because I can do a lot more now than I could do 10 years or 5 years ago. I talked today with a customer about the on-premise data gateway, which is I can actually do an integration to an on-premise system from our own online instance. That was unheard of, 5 years ago. I could never have created an on-premise integration from our system 5 years ago. And there were so much code to be set up. I've held a presentation with another friend of mine, Thomas Hansar, the CRM keeper, where we looked at virtual entities, and if that could be used to set up an integration between two systems for two functional consultants, and we could. So that just means that I can do so much more of my thing, so I don't have to wait for a developer. And for a developer, you're free to do all the cool stuff you want to do. And not do the JavaScript, can you hide this field or can you show this field?
And we can always take shots, no matter what, Marlin will always need us.
Yep.
That's how we're going to end this presentation. So a minute early. Oh, we're getting better.
Very good.
If any questions we're here about, I'm chairing another session in about 15 minutes, so I will politely leave in about 5 or 10 just so the other speaker is ready. But we're here to chat and do whatever we want in the meantime. But other than that, thank you for coming to the session.
Thank you. And thank you for the user group you had us.
Yeah, I'm in a weird quandary now where I can't thank myself for having myself at my own user group. So
thank you, Matt, and thank you, Malin. I will thank you on behalf of our team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was really good. Thank you very much, Matt and Malin.
I did well to not talk about custom actions for half an hour like the last time I did the presentation.
I know.
I got carried away last time.
I see there's a question from Matt.
Is there?
MCJ.
There is a question for.
Awesome session. I think you both know my feelings towards sort of like pro code and low code and things like that. Have you guys seen a shift in how developers approach problems now? I see several paradigms happening. I see some developers that are there like, well, I have Power Automate now, or Logic apps, I should use that. Whereas other developers are like, well, I have this tried and trusted C# code that does its thing, and I'm a developer and therefore I'm right, and things like that. Where do you guys see pro code developers going? Do you think they're going to try and embrace the new tools? Do you think they'll hold on to what they know? What do you think is just going to be down to personal preference?
I think personal preference. I had a customer contact me asking if we knew Power Automate, because their their team or partner, they had made a PowerShell script that was going in Azure AD and updating the user base in an IFS solution because it wasn't connected to IFS. And the partner actually said that, yeah, so we've made this PowerShell and it works. You just it just goes through one and one, and you have to manually trigger it. And by the way, if you put it in your production system, we won't support it. And we're like, oh, why did you make it? What? So they're like, okay, so can you do Power Automate? Because we don't trust them anymore. They have no idea apparently. And can you do Power Automate or Logic apps or something? So I think it depends on what you know and what you're used to using, and can you do it?
Yeah, the other thing it depends on for me, async and sync is still a huge topic of discussion. It's absolutely still a huge topic of discussion. And until Power Automate can be feature complete with sync workflows, then for me, most use cases, it's the problem I've got is if async fails, you don't know it's failed, and then it's on to me to then go and still dig into the low code stuff to go, why didn't it work? So I mean, it works when it works. I'm still a fan of the plugins on autosave because I don't trust systems to not work that I can't go and monitor the logs of, that I can't, that other people have built. And I still think packaging up flows to move up and down environments is a pain. Mm-hmm. Whereas my plugins, I know I can plug in, I can do a single click and it'll work. So it's not the way they want it to go. For me, if unless it's something super simple, I would, if it's important, I would rather code it because I know it's going to work. I can fail safe it. I can handle everything. I still feel like jumping to Flow to check something worked is a disjointed experience. So that's my problem. So maybe that's selfishly as a dev, I don't know. I've got past the worry that I'm not needed anymore. I know I'm always going to be needed. But I think, yeah, my practices can be passed on better. So I still am the same. Power Automate is great for trivial stuff. For real life business processes, I want to be involved. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Scott always does good blogs. Oh, hang on, I need to start the recording. Did it stop? No. Oh gosh. Oh my word! Too many things. Which one is it? That one. That one. Right. Yeah. I mean, there's more questions. I'm still about. If anyone wants them, me and Malin aren't going to go anywhere yet.